Okay, so welcome to this Cybernaut Club special. Um, Today, myself, Paul Powers, and the Cybernaut Club, we're going to come together and meet with an exceptional guest, somebody who we've only known for a few weeks, and you know when you meet somebody and you have that instant rapport and that instant connection. Maybe it's because he's American, maybe it's because he's hilarious, maybe it's because we're both bald. I'm not sure what it is, um, but Phil Leirness is my spirit animal.
All right. How do I
There
sound?
we are. Oh, like an angel.
Well, we knew that. I mean, I'm going to turn the name of this from Cybernaut into Cyber Can. I don't know. I got nothing.
Yeah,
Cyber
definitely.
yes. Cyber yes, not cyber no. Okay, what does Cybernaut Club mean exactly?
What does it mean?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's a pretty good question. Well, basically,
And you edit these, don't you?
yeah, I think I should start editing. We can break if you need to. I noticed you broke the first cardinal rule and you took a sip of coffee there.
I know. This is what I found out after 15 months of Zoom. Don't drink coffee. But I do this on the midweek drive all the time. I mean,
Yeah, I
although
know. I was
although
going to
this
say
is
I
on
know
YouTube. This is going to go on YouTube. People are going to
it
see me.
is. Yeah, people are going to see you. Yeah, that's why I put wax in my beard, and I thought, I shorned my head freshly today, and I thought if there's two eggs on screen, it's going to be too much, for the average viewer.
I did
Like,
not prep for on camera. I
you
mean,
look beautiful.
I'm not even wearing my going out t-shirt.
Oh yes,
But anyway, we can
very
lose all
nice.
this hopefully. But yes, a Cybernaut Club. Where does this originate?
So I was sat here one night and I was doing work. I was like doing something like marking or admin or something like that. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, that phrase popped in my head, Cybernaut Club, or Cybernaut, and it hit me from nowhere. And I was like, was that even my thought? Like, where did that come from? And then I thought, okay, that sounds like an interesting name for a website. I'm gonna I'm gonna go onto Reg123, or one of those website registrations. The others are available, and I looked for the domain, and it was available, and it was 99p. And I thought, okay, well, even if I don't do anything with it, I'm what am I losing? £1? That's it, or $1. I'm spending $1, and I've got the name, and I've got the summer coming up in a couple of weeks' time, where I have 6-7 weeks off, where I could potentially do something with it. And like an hour later, I remembered the old story about where the origin of ideas come from, and where the origin of the word genius comes from as well. Now, disclaimer, I'm not calling myself a genius by any stretch of the imagination. But there was this old tale that said that hundreds of years ago, people who had ideas would give an offering to a genie, and they'd say, oh, the genie has blessed me today, it's given me this good idea. And then eventually over time, I don't know whether it was the ego or just lost in translation over generations, that became, known as genius. And then instead of it being applied to an external force, it was applied to the person who had the idea. So that's something that we can talk about
as
later,
opposed to as opposed to the third path, which is an internal force, one that we all have access to, though we have to do a great deal of work in order to open ourselves to that source. This is why, right, that for so long there were famously producers and executives in show business who thought that the word writing and the word typing meant the exact same thing. And so if they didn't hear typing, they thought that the writers that they had hired weren't doing their work. Whereas in reality, writing is much more akin to listening than it is to doing anything. You're listening. You're not creating with your conscious mind. I love Cybernaut as a name, and I know certainly in our discussion today we're going to live up to a holistic definition, I think, of this. But just the idea of of being an explorer in this form, right? Exploring through the internet, through social applications, but also the topics that you seem interested in exploring.
Yeah, definitely. There was and
by the way, welcome to your show, because clearly I've taken over and am interviewing you for the next hour. And by the way, it may be wrong to be drinking coffee on camera. I've heard this, but how can it be wrong when it feels so right? That's the thing.
Yeah.
I do subscribe to an ancient belief that there is not deep down any man, woman, or child on this planet who in their heart of hearts does not enjoy a lovely beverage. So how can it be wrong? How can it be wrong? And plus, we should mention, or not, because it really isn't interesting, and that's what I specialize in. It's 5 o'clock where you are. It's only 9 a.m. I will get better, but only through the aid of coffee.
Yeah. I'm kind of, oh, crikey. My ear just got bombarded by music then, because I touched this little thing here and it started to play some techno. Sorry about that.
Oh, and we don't techno for an answer on this.
So I tried to have a lie-in this morning, but the my beautiful, intelligent, strong, there was just no words to describe how wonderful my wife is, said no. And so I had to get up. And I have this terrible feature that's built into me where if I'm awake for about 12 hours, my system just shuts down and then I'm useless. So I've got about 4 hours of hyperactivity left.
That's good. Yeah. I don't know what that looks like for you, but because I've only ever seen you in this little box, but that's very exciting. My wife asking me just now what I was doing. I said, well, we're going to record Cybernaut Club. And she gave a reaction of being very impressed, followed by, I don't know what that is.
Okay.
That's what she said. So there we go. And I think that somehow is exactly what you're looking for with this show. You want people both to be impressed and to not know what it is.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I have different influences, obviously Joe Rogan, but more recently, over the past few months, I've discovered Good Mythical Morning. Are you familiar with those guys?
I don't, but this is the second conversation in a row someone has felt the need to bring up Joe Rogan, who I consider a Johnny come lately in the world of podcasting. Yeah, that's how long I've been doing it.
Yeah, when did you start? What year did you start?
I mean, if we go back to the time when it was cups with string between it, that I've been doing it since then. Dean Haglund and I began Actually, before our show began, we had started several months earlier. I didn't even know what a podcast was, so this was probably late 2006, and then we started making it a regular show. We tell the story that we used to gather together. We had production offices next door to each other, and we used to gather together literally on Monday morning for water cooler discussion. What movies did you see? Did you hear about this news? We would discuss the show business news of the day. And one of our assistants who would overhear this said, you know, guys, this would make a really interesting podcast. You should go into one of your offices, record this, lay this down, put this up. And so we began. We say that the show started in May of 2007 because that was when it got picked up by a network, and we didn't have the flexibility to say, no, that was terrible, let's not let anyone listen to this. Whatever we did at that point was going to have an audience. And only in retrospect do we realize that that assistant may not have actually meant that what we were doing was good enough for a show, and instead might have meant, could you please take this conversation elsewhere so I can get my work done? But, giant things are built out of humble beginnings.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you should be so insecure about that. The remark from that assistant, it could have been genuine. Maybe you're just second guessing.
Maybe I am. Maybe I don't know what happened to that assistant. I know that I rode them out of town on a rail. But anyway, but good for them. My apologies to them. They were visited by the genie that day.
Yeah.
Do you see what I did there? I already tied it into a theme.
We've gone full circle.
If anyone's still listening, let's start.
Yeah, let's make a start. So getting back to the origins of the name. So it popped into my head and I thought, right, I'm going to have that, before somebody else snaps it up, because I have a bad habit of, or I did have a bad habit that I've since killed, of having what appears to be great ideas and not taking action when they pop in the head. Like
you just kind of read my mind, though, because you know what it's about, though, is trusting your own way of knowing. When you got the idea, when the idea came to you, when it danced to you in a dream of Cybernaut Club, you trusted your way of knowing that, yes, this is right for me. And it goes beyond the idea of judgment of, oh, this is good, this is bad, this is clever, this is lacking. It's just, no, this feels right, this is right. And it doesn't really matter at that point what other people might think. You know that you have found home for you in this idea, because the truth is, good ideas come to everyone all the time. I interviewed a wonderful podcaster recently, checked in with him. He's there on your fair shores. Dave Pickering has worked as a podcaster for a long time. And I have said that I want to be him when I grow up. And he said he has made a sign for himself that says, oh, dear Lord, help me, I have an idea. Because once you have this good idea, it then almost feels stressful, like a burden. Like, do you owe something to the idea? Do you have to do something with it? And the truth is, I've experienced this all the time in screenwriting. People will come up to me, I have a great idea for a screenplay. Oh, good. Now all you have left is all the work.
Yeah.
Right? We get good ideas all the time. Yeah. There is really a different, almost as if they are, like you described, they're generated from a different place than those ones that you walk into and you say, aha, this is me.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like what I'm trying to do is build if possible, an online friendly, safe community for people who are interested in technology and sci-fi and futurism. And together we can investigate how the art of science fiction movies and fantasy films are informing the world of science and vice versa. So that we can celebrate things like Star Trek and Star Wars and Blade Runner and the Terminator, and then also have a look at what Elon Musk is doing with Neuralink, and and just see how
Are
things
we are we also allowed to criticize Star Wars and
definitely.
lay at its
Yeah,
feet a fair portion of the blame for the xenophobia, for the right-wing conservatism, for the mental illness that has swept through our populace as a
yeah.
result of their adherence to banal fantasy? I pick on Star Wars. I kid. No, I think it's I think it has led to nothing else than a proliferation of mental illness. Uh,
Do
I I
we
I
do?
think banal fantasy is dangerous, and I think it started at this point of breathing life into archetypal mythologies that live within us, and at some point, it's easy to criticize again films, like by saying, "Oh, well, these films are bad," and therefore, and I'm not talking about the films in
Yeah.
particular. I'm not talking about the shows. I'm talking about what happens when fantasy gets co-opted for in largely corporate interests and gets exploited.
Mm.
And as opposed to fantasy in the form of, like I said, these shared archetypal mythologies that again rise up through us. Now they're being exploited and imposed upon us, and how they work on us is therefore different. I don't know if that makes sense, and I know that a lot of people are already angry at me for throwing Star Wars under the bus. I love the original Star Wars. I love Empire Strikes Back. And at that point, I began already to be concerned about what was being visited upon humanity and our culture. As an adherence to this, flash forward to J.J. Abrams' The Force Awakens, and yeah, I thought the die was cast. This was a convention of mental illness.
And like, where do you place the the birth of that terrible burden on society? Is it, would you go so far, like nerd erotic, who takes what appears to be an incredible amount of pleasure in slating Kathleen Kennedy?
No, I would never look. All of us,
Yeah,
for the most part, except for the sociopathic among us, are made up of this incredible collection of attributes. Some that we think of as good, some we think of as bad, some we think of as ugly, and they all serve in certain contexts. They all have value. They're all beautiful. The good, the bad, and the ugly are beautiful for most of us. And I think most of us are just trying to do the best we can where we are at any given point. So I never think that
yeah,
anything like this. I'm thinking more writ large culturally. What do these things say about us? And I am aware that in previous generations, the approach towards childhood by even corporate interests was different. I watched not too long ago at a Christmas time a Laurel and Hardy movie, Babes in Toyland, and on the DVD were vintage television commercials for toys, and all the toys being marketed and sold to little kids were toys about pretending you were grown up, telling you how much fun it is to be a grown up. Now, flash forward 50 years, less than 50 years, and toys are being marketed as at adults
yeah,
so that we don't have to let go of childhood. No
yeah,
longer are toys and fantasy aspirational. They're about reaching back and not letting go. So is this kind of nostalgia, which I always think is deadly, Is this kind of nostalgia the responsibility of the people marketing it, the people exploiting it? No, they're responsible for their own piece in it. But nostalgia lives within us. This pull lives within us, or it wouldn't work. So all of these things that emerge into our culture, this is the classroom, right? That we're all in, this shared reality that we seem unable to agree upon. This shared reality is a classroom, and it's for the purpose of us looking at what is going on within us as individuals and within us as a collective psyche. Did that get me out from underneath the anger of the Star Wars fans? I don't know.
Hope so. You know, I am a Star Wars fan, and I'm not mad at you.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, I did try to parse out that I'm not. It's not a criticism of a movie. You know, I share this. I was a big fan of the Marvel movies for quite a while until I wasn't.
Yeah. So when did that happen? What, you know, like what caused you to go from being a fan to not?
Well, when it, for me personally, becomes obvious that, okay, this is no longer about stories we want to tell. This is about a product locomotive that we want to just keep going. It goes from being any kind of personal human expression, and it goes from being the expression of a board of directors, you know, operating from purely financial concerns. And again, does that mean the individual movies don't work? No, not necessarily. In the midst of that, oh my goodness, one of the best Marvel movies ever was Thor Ragnarok. And here's one where the marketing board kept saying, no, we need to reshoot to add more of this. We need to reshoot to add. They spent $70 million on reshoots in that. But it was it was a really fun movie. But what was exciting to me?
Yeah. He's definitely one of my favorites. I think no, sorry, you carry on. You go ahead.
Well,
I'm new to this, so I'm going to step on you a little bit. I'm sorry. I apologize.
No, that's fine. When it was exciting to me at first was you know, at the time when it really surprised a lot of people that Iron Man, the first Iron Man, was a big hit because the conventional wisdom, a phrase I love because, by the way, there's nothing conventional about actual wisdom, just like common decency. Decency really isn't that common. But the conventional wisdom was, well, this will not be a hit because Iron Man is a C-level comic book character. This has no chance of appealing the way that the Batmans or the Supermans or even the Marvel universe's closest to an A-list character, the Spider-Mans, appeal. And what was overlooked, again, was what the story, and specifically the Marvel stories, had to share and celebrate with an audience that might be hungry for the message. In the Marvel universe, the superheroes largely are examples of that which wounds us, heals us. You take the wounding of a character and their strength ends up coming from that wound, as opposed to the DC universe, where the wound is a vulnerability that needs to be hidden. I need to go into my subterranean cave, put on a mask, and come out stronger, but not stronger in the broken places. I am all impervious to anything except for kryptonite, which is a remnant of my original wounding. In the Marvel universe, it's literally my bad heart becomes the source of my strength. And the truth is, this spoke to an unconscious need that we have as people to believe not that we can be loved or appreciated in spite of our flaws and our vulnerabilities, but that we can be loved and appreciated and useful and, yes, even strong because of our vulnerabilities. And so that was a very exciting time for me, and it made great sense to me. They continue to have the imprint they do because of the marketing power and apparatus behind them, not what was so exciting about them when they first came along, which was it was storytellers telling a story, and the audience is either going to embrace it or not. There was no way to force feed this down anyone's throats, as it were.
Yeah, it appeared that it wasn't set in stone that the destiny of the MCU would end like 10 years later. It was even at the point of when Iron Man 2 came out, people, or the general opinion was, oh, well, that's not very good, or that just, why did they bother with that? Because that was just a setup for another film. Or I actually really liked Iron Man 2. But with the Incredible Hulk came just before, and again, that was, a very, was it good? Was it not? It gets a bit of lash, negative feedback from fans. So it wasn't set in stone that the MCU would become this behemoth, this beast that it eventually did become. And over that decade, except for the blip of Captain Marvel that I'd like to come to in a minute, but it was almost as if for me, I was getting more and more and more excited. It didn't matter what else was going on in my life, how crap my life was. I knew that there was a new Marvel film coming soon, so I always had something to look forward to, and the excitement was almost like going up a theatrical roller coaster, and when it was just about to hit the top when Infinity War came, and then Endgame, and then shoo, after that, about 6 months after that film, I was like, I think I'm done now. I think I'm over it.
It did absolutely. It was theme park ride. You would even hear this in reviews, right? It's the thrill ride of the summer. And I've never heard anyone get off an amusement park ride saying, oh man, that was the best movie of the year.
Yeah.
So it was very strange, the thing that we wanted it to be thrill rides. Also, this idea of the excitement. Excitement is not a particularly healthy, it's adrenaline. Living in adrenaline, but we live in a time where we've all accepted that living off of adrenaline is somehow how we're supposed to do it, even though it keeps us out of the deeper resources within us. There's so much to unpack here, but one of the things also is if something can't fail, it also really can't succeed. Its success can only be so deep. Of course, it can succeed financially, but Dean and I used to talk about this on the show a lot. So much of show business, increasingly in show business, because of the budgets involved, risk management has entered the meeting. We're investing so much, so how can we mitigate our risk? The truth is nothing creative ever came out of risk management. Creativity is risky. If you can't fail, you can't fully succeed, right? The Andrea Del Sardo line, a man's reach should exceed his grasp. Well, no, we know what we need to grasp. We need to grasp a minimum 300 million domestic and 900 million worldwide, or we don't break even. We better at least be able to grasp that. So what do we put into place to do it? So, and they're in business to be in business. As storytellers, if you are hired, there has to be a reason you want to tell that particular story. If there isn't a really strong emotional connection to the story you're trying to tell, there won't be life in it. And all the more so, the more money behind it. It becomes harder and harder and harder to breathe life into this. This is why Johnny Depp becomes a cottage industry because of the first Pirates of the Caribbean. Can you imagine how lifeless that would be without someone who was connecting deeply with something at the heart of it? And remember, when that movie was being tested, the producers, the studio wanted him fired, wanted it reshot, because we don't know what this thing is because we didn't plan for it. Robert Downey Jr. in Iron Man, really? You're going to put Robert Downey? Yeah, he's a fine actor, but in an Iron Man, this is a risk that we really shouldn't be taking.
And one that paid off as well, massively.
Yeah. And the risk is your only way to creatively have it pay off. And if it creatively pays off, now it emotionally is going to pay off in the audience, and those payoffs are going to be exponential. I think I've probably gone too far afield, but I do think that it becomes harder and harder and harder to lead with the question, why do we want to tell this story? Why is this story something we want to tell? As all the reasons to make the movie take precedence over it. Iron Man 2. It's called Iron Man 2. It's on the production chart as Iron Man 2 before they even have a story for it, right? So how do you have a story, spoiler alert, you never will, that matters as much as it's the second Iron Man? I think actually what was really fun and was kind of a winking warning to us all those years ago, even if it was unconscious, was the way Steven Spielberg had Kate Capshaw come out and sing at the beginning of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, a movie I guess we're not supposed to talk about anymore because of the unfortunate racial diversity issues and depictions. But at the beginning of the film, Kate Capshaw comes out and sings, and she's standing in front of the title, blocking it. And I thought it was such a wonderful wink at the audience going, you know, what the name of this movie is doesn't matter. It's the second Indiana Jones film. That's all that matters. It's a product locomotive. And so I'll just end with this. I thought that the most telling example of what we're talking about doesn't come from the Marvel universe. It comes from Wonder Woman 1984, where the whole story is about having your wishes come true, right? And one of those wishes is that Chris Pine comes back, his character comes back to life in the body of another person. And I'm just staring at this going, okay, this is how this came about. The marketing department at the studio, having had this unexpected big hit in the form of the first Wonder Woman, has been saying since that film came out, oh boy, I wish we didn't kill off Chris Pine. I wish we didn't kill off Chris Pine, because boy, he breathed life into that. His humor, his vulnerability, his sense of fun, it breathed life into that in a way that so many of the DC superhero movies lack altogether. They take themselves so seriously. And this was humanity that we could recognize on a glorious display in the form of Chris Pine. And so the marketing department was saying, oh, I wish we hadn't killed him. I wish we hadn't killed him. I wish we hadn't killed him. And then one marketing executive probably raised his finger and said, I've got it. That's our story. What if our wishes came true? And it's a perfect example of how stories get generated by the marketing department and then handed off to the quote unquote creatives. And the creatives might say, I don't know if there's a story here. And then they show them what they're going to get paid. And they go, how much? Oh, yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, I haven't seen the new Wonder Woman yet. The sequel.
I guess spoiler alert.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. I did see the trailer though, and the trailer gave that away. So there's no surprise. Like it, that's the problem as well with modern trailers. If I go back to thinking about Terminator Genesis, that film was completely ruined by the trailer. What were they thinking? Do you know what I'm talking about with John Connor?
Is this the one where Schwarzenegger comes back? Is this the one, or is
Um,
this the one with Christian Bale? No, that was
the,
Salvation.
yeah,
I
this
Which
is the
is the
one,
one where he fought the Russian?
the Russian.
Oh, that's Rocky 4. I'm so
Yeah,
sorry. I keep I
that's
think the one
Stallone.
with Christopher Stallone Schwarzenegger. Boy, imagine how ashamed I am to get
How
those
can you
guys
not
confused.
differentiate
Yeah, exactly.
between?
Um I it's interesting. A wonderful character actor. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about this. I just read a fun story about how Schwarzenegger got his start in movies through the great Robert Altman because of a character actor who was friends with him and just said, you might really enjoy being in movies. Anyway, I love, again, stories of how from modest, humble beginnings, these big things, because Schwarzenegger certainly became again an industry unto himself. But I think the last one I saw was the one with Christian Bale. That
Okay.
was the last Terminator I saw.
So the one after that, it has the young lady from the Game of Thrones, the one who plays Daenerys. I can't remember her name, her real name.
Oh, it's
Um,
a fantasy show, Game of Thrones.
yeah,
I don't watch it. I
no.
don't watch it. I'm sorry.
So I think her name's Amelia something. I could be wrong. Please don't blow up the comments if I'm
You-
completely off point.
And you know what? I'm not throwing all fantasy under the bus. I really am not. The real reason we don't watch Game of Thrones is my wife has a thing about certain eras and the beards, and just like she has this horrible fear that people are going to be like eating mutton and the food's going to get stuck in the beard, and that creeps her out so much. So I just
You
try to
can
keep a happy home. So I just am not going to let that be on.
you better not show her this, because like, this is not going to stop. Like
That is
I'm
that is a starter beard compared to Game of
yeah.
Thrones, though. Compared to Game of Thrones, that's still.
This thing comes and goes. My
Anyway, you were
God,
trying to tell me about Terminator
yeah,
Genesis
but
or
I was
something.
just gonna say, God bless her. My mother is I don't know. Hopefully, she's not going to watch this, but my mother is of a previous generation, and whenever I grow my beard out and I do FaceTime with her, she'll say to my lovely wife Naomi, she'll say, "Ah, sure, Naomi, when he's asleep, can you not shave that bloody thing off? For he looks like a Muslim."
Oh,
And I'm like, Mum, what's wrong with that? Like, come on, like I have Muslim friends. There's nothing wrong. Go on, get rid of that beard now. And I'm like, bloody hell, Mum, calm down. Go have a Guinness or something. Um,
wow.
yeah, she's of a very, I don't know, racist generation. From that's why I live in a different country to her, and I'm over here. Um,
Everybody does the best they can,
yeah,
that's the thing. And the way people talk about things, it certainly evolves generation to generation, as it should. I was thinking about how much I appreciate this conversation and talking about these concepts, because honestly, I find myself so often confronted by white men such as ourselves who want to engage with me in the conversation, lamenting the things we're not allowed to say anymore. And I
right.
thought, well, what have I done
Okay.
wrong that I'm in this conversation right now? I don't want to talk. We're talking about how we can't talk. What? That's not a nourishing conversation to me. I feel like sometimes we do, as people, have to have conversations about how we communicate. I get
Yeah.
that. But I also believe that if we really don't know how to communicate, the least we ought to do is just shut the hell up. And because I really value communication, and I do also fundamentally believe that any conversation can be elevated out of the contentious by asking better questions, right? I do, again, not as a mea culpa to me throwing Star Wars under the bus, but I am concerned about this concept of fantasy and how it gets exploited. That's the issue. I never blame an audience. I don't blame an audience for gravitating towards things. I think that there's a responsibility that comes with the stories that we tell and with what we market and what we sell. There's a responsibility that comes to this because it is an awesome power. And so how are we exploiting fantasy? Once you put the phrase like that, now it becomes, this is not about Star Wars. This is not about a franchise being good or bad. This is about a really fundamental question. And it's not just studios that do this, right? And it's not just toy manufacturers. Honestly, it's politicians throughout history who exploit fantasy in terms of gaining and securing and cementing power. So this is a worthy conversation for all of us to have, the Star Trek fan and the Star Wars fan. But I don't ever want to take the smile off an audience member's face. If you love something, I'm glad you love it. I'm genuinely glad that somebody loves something. No matter how good we might think something is, there will always be people who say, oh, that's rubbish, and reject it. And no matter how bad we think something is, there's always going to be a percentage of the population that really enjoys it, that gets something out of it. And that's great. People should love things. Loving things opens us to experience. It makes life worth living. So I never want to take the smile off people's faces. When I am in a screening, a packed screening, like for The Force Awakens, and the reaction after it is to see a whole lot of people's faces scrunched up like mine going, now, are we allowed to swear on this or not? Are we allowed to curse? I won't. I won't. I'll just say, but you know what I'm saying. It was a curse. They're scrunching up their faces and they're screaming at the top of their lungs as the movie ended, F yeah, F yeah. That's what I'm effing talking about. Like they were at a gladiatorial game. This is at the end of a Star Wars movie. And I went, okay, something wrong culturally has happened. I never saw this after Empire Strikes Back.
Really, but that was the excitement of
it's excitement.
It's
having excitement justified and then doubled down. It was not an experience that opened these people to some deeper part of their nature. And that's why I think we love, right, for the most part, fantasy, science fiction, futurism. What we love is that they open us not only to concepts and to possibilities, but to deeper parts of our own consciousness. And they do so with this sense of wonder, not a sense of excitement, a sense of wonder, which may not have the same level of intensity, which is why Blade Runner might not be a hit when it comes out. It might be rejected when it comes out, because wonder doesn't grab a hold of the masses the way that excitement does. But it's longer lasting, its ramifications run deeper, and we're still talking about Blade Runner all these decades later. It is interesting, if you go through the history of cinema and you look at the top 10 films of a year, how you don't have to go back very far before you start to go, oh yeah, I barely remember that film, and here it is, one of the top 10 hits of the year. Because it excited us. It titillated us in some way that was superficial, that was energetically on the surface, that didn't run deep. And so it doesn't stay with us, because you know what? Something else is going to tap into our excitement, which is why I don't remember what Terminator movie it was called, right? Because the original one, indelible. The second one, indelible. But these were stories that clearly somebody wanted to tell. The first Matrix, indelible. They can claim, the Wachowskis, that they had this longer story that they wanted to tell, but they didn't know how to tell it. And it really did come across as a question of, how do we keep this going? Not, I have to tell this. I know this is something I have to tell.
I wonder if they've sorted that out in time for the fourth one that's coming. The fourth Matrix.
The wait is over, isn't it?
I remember the Matrix. Like, a friend of mine gave me a copy, a pirated copy of The Matrix in 1999. We worked in a nightclub together, and he lent it to me. And it never left my VCR. It just kept going around every spare moment I had. I was hooked to that film. And then I remember a couple of years later, I'd moved from England to Ireland, and then the new Matrix, the Revolution, Reloaded or Revolutions was coming, and for some reason, for marketing purposes, or the third one was going to be released only a couple of months after the second one, and I thought at the time, that's strange, but also okay, I'm looking forward to that. But then when I saw the third one, I was really like, huh? That was it was an anticlimactic experience. It wasn't good, and I don't know where they can go with that, because they killed the hero pretty much at the end of the third one. Spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen the Matrix trilogy. So how can two characters that died come back? I mean, I'm fascinated to see that. But
well, the marketing department at Warner Brothers just has to
Yeah.
wish for it to be true. By the way,
Yeah.
I think it is Warner Brothers. So there you
It
go.
is, yeah,
That's fantastic. Wish fulfillment. That is our motto. Did you finish the story about Terminator Genesis? I feel like we keep moving.
I didn't, but that's okay. This could be the Terminator Genesis special, where we actually never talk about it, but just we allude to it every now and then. So basically, what happened in the trailer was it gave the whole film away. John Connor actually, it goes back to the future. So it goes to the future where Kyle Reese is about to make the leap into the 80s to save Sarah Connor. And as he's in the process of spinning naked in the time stuff, he's about to go back. He sees out of the corner of his eye, John gets grabbed by this sort of advanced Terminator that gives him a wink. Then he goes through the motions of the original Terminator film, up until the point where he steals the pants from the tramp in the alleyway. He breaks into the store to find some sneakers and clothes, and then the roles are completely reversed, and Sarah Connor bursts through into the store to rescue him from a sort of Asian model T1000 that really shouldn't be there. So everything has kind of changed. But what the trailer then went and did was showed you that at some point in the movie, John Connor himself has been turned into a Terminator made up of nanobots and nanoparticles. And it showed that like before I went to go and see the film.
Oh.
I almost didn't even, just, yeah, nightmare. But yeah, so
this is what you mean when you say that the movie was ruined by the trailer. You meant it was literally ruined for you because of the amount of knowledge you had beforehand about the movie. This is a really tricky situation, and again, I think it goes back to the financials involved. It's expensive to go see a movie, and a lot of people want to know that they're not wasting their money. We also have limitations on our time. So we want to know that we're not wasting our time. And the answer to that is, well, let's tell you what you're going to get in advance so you can make that decision. And so, gone is this idea of, again, trying to open you to the experience. It's trying to assuage your fears in advance. And I'm no different. I mean, when I go to a movie, I still, I spend the first 10 minutes kind of with my arms folded going, okay, all right, did I make a good choice? And I've done my research about who made it and all of this, but I still go, okay, I hope this is going to be good. And so what ends up happening for me, even the first time I see a movie, is I realize if it is good, I go, okay, I'll enjoy this a lot more the second time I see it, because now I'll be able to relax and go, all right, these people know what they're doing. I now can really embrace it. So again, it's a tough thing Dean and I talk about this a lot. The most important element of storytelling is the tone of a story. If storytellers going back to the ancient poets don't think in terms of time, but think in terms of tone. If you don't think in terms of, okay, we got to get this amount of box office on this opening weekend or we are screwed. If you think in terms of this is the right tone for this material, then the story you're telling may not appeal to the big audience on opening weekend, but it does have the chance to ambiate across the ages. This is why we read Plato and we are still thrilled to this day. It is immediate to us. It's because of the tone of it. That's the power, that's the superpower of storytellers. It is also the thing that is hardest to encapsulate in a marketing campaign. It's the most important thing that dictates what a particular piece of work will do for and to its audience is the tone of that piece, how it will thrill us, how it will delight us, how it will shock us, how it will open us, how it will close us, is most powerfully dictated by the tone of a piece. It's almost impossible to encapsulate tone in a marketing campaign. So you take the single most important thing, you remove it from the possible advertising, what's left? Plot, really? Highlights? Action, and so this is one of the issues with a modern day marketing campaign.
I think it was the tone of the movie of Terminator Genesis was that was something that was criticized, but not because it was because the tone was off in any way. I think all throughout the film, it had a light sense of humor throughout it, and the colors were very bright as well, which is unusual for a Terminator film. And there was attempts at humor throughout as well. And the film itself wasn't ruined for me because it is, I get a lot of criticism from friends for saying that is one of my favorites. Like I would say that the first one, the second one, and then Terminator Genesis would, in order of preference, it would go in that order. And other people, they would say, how can you even like Terminator Genesis? But I think it's an enjoyable popcorn film. Obviously, if that was released back, in the early 80s when the original Terminator came out, there wouldn't be probably a series today. But it was, for a popcorn action summertime blockbuster, it was great. And it's,
but but if it had been the original one, you don't know that. I mean,
unless we get a time machine.
Well, again, think of all the, all the sci-fi films that seemingly failed to really land, and yet the following behind these movies loved them so much that it gave a larger section of the population time to catch up with them. This concept of tone, audiences. This is the problem again with sequels. This is the challenge. This is the big challenge with these, is that they do become public at that point. The ownership of them becomes public, and so you hear this all the time with debates about Star Trek. Well, that's not Star Trek. This isn't Star Trek. You heard it with Star Wars movies. That's not Star Wars. This is not Star Wars. It's public. It's publicly owned at that point. And we even heard it with the Harry Potter movies. Prisoner of Azkaban, directed by Alfonso Cuarón, is the first movie to really have a magical tone to it. He makes a movie that is genuinely magical and gets hailed by critics and does not do near the business that the first two did because, well, wait a minute, this is not a Harry Potter movie. And then there were other people who said, well, they cut too much of the book out, right? It's public determination that this is not. In retrospect, Azkaban does stand out as one of it's, as everybody says, it's the Empire Strikes Back of the Harry Potter franchise. And so even a tone that really does allow it to, as I said, ambiate across the years, might alienate contemporary audiences if it is in a form that is already publicly owned. Steven Spielberg famously made the third Indiana Jones movie to apologize for the aforementioned second Indiana Jones movie. I can only imagine he made the fourth one to apologize for the third one, and now he's not doing the fifth one because he knows that no apology will suffice for that one. But I never thought that he should have to apologize for the second one, if for no other reason that I thought it was incredibly brave that he made a follow-up that tonally was completely different from the first one. He consciously ran the risk of alienating his audience by doing a second film. Never mind, again, plot and story and characters and all this, which is an important conversation. But tonally, he set out on an entirely different map to an uncharted terrain in that sequel, which I thought was really bold, really brave, and was the whole reason to make that movie, because after all, it's a prequel. We know that Indiana Jones isn't going to die. So there aren't the stakes involved that there were with the first film. So why not make the stakes artistic stakes? And again, seek out some fresh snow to walk on as a storyteller. And he did that. And I don't think that ever requires an apology.
Temple of Doom is it is my favorite Indiana Jones movie.
Oh.
And
well, but that's we know though that's because you come from a long line of racists.
Yeah, definitely. Oh Nam Shivaya, oh Nam Shivaya. No, it's just I think what it was
hey, this is, I'm sharing, I was going to do this on my show on Monday, but I just learned that in the state of Alabama, they passed legislation to repeal the ban on yoga. Since 93, in all schools, yoga was banned because it was feared in Alabama that it was part of that systematic effort you hear so much about to convert people to Hinduism. It's part of the big global mysticism. Hindu elite conspiracy. And so now for the first time, school kids can engage in the very healthy practice of yoga. But what they can't do still, meditate or say the word namaste. But anyway, I just thought I was very excited about that. I was excited about that, and I was excited especially about it from a part of the world that is particularly upset about woke culture preventing them from saying certain things anymore. But please, by all means, ban the word namaste. Anyway, there goes. So Star Wars fans and anyone in Alabama is not gonna be your audience ever again,
and probably anybody from India as well, which is, they're just a tiny population of people, aren't they? Really, it's just it's a very, very, very small market is India. But also, Temple of Doom is one of my favorites, and I think at a young age, being exposed to different cultures in that way from a beloved movie creator such as Spielberg, because I knew the name Steven Spielberg before any other movie director. I knew that I knew the tone and the feel of a Spielberg movie from E.T. onwards. He had me hooked from E.T. and then all the way through to The Color Purple. Everything that came out. That he touched was something that that I could tap into as a child.
I don't think that there was a filmmaker since Hitchcock who achieved what you are describing, that name above the title that an audience is aware of. As a director, it's very, very rare. I mean, as we get older, yeah, then we start to realize, oh, Stanley Kubrick, or today Christopher Nolan, or on and on, Fellini. There were certain filmmakers throughout history that are identified with cinema itself, but for a general movie-going public, I think it was Hitchcock, and then it was Spielberg. And now it's Tyler Perry. I don't know. I felt like I needed to mention a third. I don't know who, but no, but that's a joke. Please cut that out.
I wanted to I wanted to reflect or distract from that, but I wanted to I reflected on your what you said about movies that that last, that they have staying power. They go through the generations, and although they might not have a very large release when they first come out, they are in hindsight perfect. And one of those is The Thing.
The original or the John Carpenter?
Carpenter, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
I haven't seen what you would call the original.
Well, it's a remake, John Carpenter's The Thing is a remake.
Right. I know. And then there's one more after that, which is also a remake, but also a prequel. Have you seen that?
I did not. So it's a remake and a prequel. That's fascinating.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like it was promoted as a remake of The Thing, where the lead character, the what's the main guy called? Oh man, the memory recall. He's so famous. What? The guy.
I'm sorry. I was just reading about the original novella. Who goes there? So this is terrible. This is gone off the rails.
This is great. This is great radio. Goldie Hawn's husband.
Kurt Russell.
Yes, Kurt Russell. Okay, so
fun story that I love to share. Favorite dying words that anyone ever had was Walt Disney. Walt Disney's dying words back in 65, was it 66? He couldn't speak anymore because of the throat cancer. He had someone, he gestured, they brought him a pad of paper and a pen, and he wrote down 2 words, and then he died, and the 2 words were Kurt Russell.
Wow.
Yeah,
because Kurt Russell had a very a very long run of Disney films, didn't he? Through his
he had just started. He had just been cast. I think they had just shot the first one. So who knows what he meant by it? I mean, I've always wished, like, Kurt Russell is my illegitimate son. I always wanted like something like that. Like, what more? Well, Kurt Russell.
He did it like he's the one who killed me. Like he poisoned me.
He killed me. Right. The Kurt Russell note. The forensics evidence on that is somewhere in the warehouse with the Ark of the Covenant. We'll never get to the bottom of it. But
yeah, so Kurt Russell, basically his role in The Thing was gender swapped in the remake, and it was advertised as a remake, but it isn't until the very end of the film that you realize that it's actually a prequel to the original Carpenter film, because in the opening of the Carpenter film, you see that there's a helicopter chasing the dog, that it ends up at their base, doesn't it, in the Arctic?
Oh, very nice. Yes.
Yeah. So at the end of this remake, that's when the dog gets away and when the helicopter goes after it.
So the remake is set back in the 1980s?
Well, we don't realize that until the end.
There's no technology that would reveal it.
No, not that I can not that I can recall. No.
All right.
Yeah.
Nobody's streaming any movies. Nobody's WhatsApping. Nobody's doing any TikTok videos.
No, I don't know. Whatever. Swiping right.
All right. Okay. Well, that's exciting. Now I kind of want to see that.
So, can you tell me about the original? Because I haven't seen that.
It's kind of it's really good. The original is really good, and what's interesting about it is that it was uncredited, directed by Howard Hawks, the great director of westerns and gangster films and screwball comedies. Quentin Tarantino, famously Quentin Tarantino's favorite filmmaker, directed it uncredited, and it is a really tight, tense, claustrophobic movie. And it's a worthy companion to the the Carpenter film.
I'm definitely going to have to check that out.
And of course, comes at a time when, a little historic perspective in order, when in the 1950s, right, there was the big communist scare in America, and the communist witch hunt, and a lot of genre films, Western and horror, dealt with this fear in certain ways. And
the fear of the other, invasion of the body snatchers and that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And so it's very much a part of that time as well. It's just a little more context that makes a film resonate. And what's interesting about it is, to me, when I will share with people about Westerns, well, why should I care about Westerns? And we'll talk a little bit about the subtextual reading of this material and how it always speaks to contemporary issues. And the interesting thing about it is that, at least in American culture, any contemporary issue, like a bad penny, keeps coming back around. So you can't say, oh, well, yeah, I can see why they're speaking to that issue at that time, but we're well beyond that now. If the last several decades have taught us anything, no, every issue is going to keep coming back around again and again and again. And so these films have an opportunity to resonate again with a new audience. I mean, right now, the fear of the other, we're talking about The Thing as we come out of a global pandemic, hopefully come out of a global pandemic. I mean, is that not a movie about a global pandemic?
Yeah, it's definitely it is a film about the first contact of what could potentially be a global pandemic, where the people who make that first contact understand the consequences of what happens if this creature, this other thing, escapes the frozen abyss that they're all in together, and they're willing to reluctantly, but they're willing to sacrifice themselves and their own lives to protect the greater good.
And they don't know that it's first contact, quite honestly. Yeah. They can only hope that it's first contact because, again, as we know, it did come from another camp. So that was the first contact, and we don't know what else might have happened there. So everything they're doing is in some ways under the hope that what we do here matters, but it could be the last contact. You really, in some degree, don't know, right? I mean, I don't think they have any communication from very early on with the outside world at all.
Yeah. Okay. Right. I never thought of it like that. Okay, right. Yeah. So because they have no contact with the outside world, but I guess the reason was because the ship was the ice core, it was like 10,000 years old or something. They had to dig down to get it so they can test the ice. So I was led to believe that it was something that was old, that that had been there hibernating for an incredibly long time. But that's a nice spin, that if somebody did survive from that camp and goes back to civilization to tell their tale, then you could take it that, well, hang on a minute, they start to see that things aren't quite right, and then another people who know them could put on the appearance that they've got PTSD from the experience that they had. And then you've got a they live situation where that main antagonist realizes that, yeah, it's all been taken over.
And especially, again, this is a perspective that comes to me only after what we've now lived through. You know, it's a different read on it, but it is interesting how that film definitely speaks to us right now. You know, it's so it originates in film form, not in the, again, novella form, but it originates in film form as being this metaphor about the fear of the other and what that can do to us. And then here we are looking at it, and we're living in a totally different world where there are invisible enemies. Where, you know, everybody said, right, we're at war. We're at war with the coronavirus. We're at war with nature because it's part of nature. Oh man, that changes the context. That changes the perspective on these things.
Well, the war on drugs didn't go very well, and the war on terror also is kind of run its course. So now they need a different kind of war.
Because whatever we focus on, that's what will grow. We know this as people. If you focus on your perceived lack, if you focus on your perceived flaws, if you focused on what's wrong about a situation, that is what will grow, because we're putting our energy towards it. Yes, a war on poverty, we have more poverty. A war on drugs, we have more drugs. A war on, because all our energy is going towards that. It isn't a surprise, and yet everybody always reacts with surprise. You know what else we get more of? We get more wars. How does the war to end all wars, how'd that go? War wins. War wins. I always used to be amused by the bumper stickers I would see that would say, war is not the answer. Really? It depends on the question, doesn't it? War is the answer for so many questions. What's good for business? War. What's good for war? War. So there goes my soapbox. Again, can I drill back to fantasy for a second? Because I want to tie in, we're talking about science fiction and fantasy and futurism. But another genre that I've really learned to not only enjoy, but truly admire. And in fact, at one point, several years back, I said that it was a genre that was literally saving the soul of cinema, is horror. I'm not what I ever would have described as a horror fan for a variety of reasons, but I truly became an admirer of the horror genre because I felt that this was the genre that was keeping alive metaphor, that was keeping alive these subtextual analyses of what it means to be human, what it means to be alive in our contemporary society, that was examining thorny issues in psychologically complex ways that were beyond either the ability or the freedom of storytellers in other cinematic genres. And horror, put simply, is fantasy. It's under the fantasy umbrella. It's, of course, the nightmare side of fantasy. And again, it's not that fantasy is unhealthy. It's not that nightmares are unhealthy. But what we see with horror franchises, I never thought there was a problem with the first Friday the 13th. This would speak to people at a time when, of course, it was derided for its slasherism. But for this to come forward, this said something to us about our psyche as a populace. It was a mirror to us. This is an important expression in its own way. But then when it's successful, and a corporation says, oh, let's give several more of these, and let's give the audience exactly what they're expecting. Oh my goodness, how is that horror? No, now it's disgusting. It's not horrifying because it's comforting. You're giving an audience exactly what they expect, which is what horror should not be about at all. Horror should be about the unexpected.
And then you get terms that grow out of that, like horror porn, or like with the Saw movies that came on top of
Torture,
that,
torture porn.
torture
Yeah.
porn. Yeah. When you look back at the original Friday the 13th, how tame is it now? When you watch what happens, it's very of its time, but also that's a kind of time that I think I would like to live in, where kids had freedom to go to a camp and be irresponsible and make mistakes, um and just have freedom from their cell phones and freedom from technology, where they could go and explore nature and explore each other, without everything being recorded, and without having the fear of making a mistake that's going to get you fired or cancelled 10 years down the road.
And yet there is this also at the same time, and this is actually a brilliant segue that you have created into the story I wanted to share with you, that was the whole impetus behind us getting together for this conversation in the first place. And I thought we would open with it, but maybe this is a good place to close. That interconnectivity, or that constant connectivity, or that constant illusion of connectivity that technology seems to give us, is comforting in the sense that if you look at social media, there is almost this fear that we have that if it isn't documented, it didn't exist. If it isn't documented, if it doesn't get likes, it didn't mean anything. We want our lives to have meaning, and it's utterly a philosophical debate as to whether they do have meaning. Because what holds meaning for you won't have meaning to me. So, but we've created a virtual reality that has signposts of meaning. Our shared reality, yeah, I guess we created those too, right? Like money. How much money you have shows how much meaning. But we've all grown beyond that. We all know that, no, that doesn't actually mean anything. Money is just energy. After all, we call it currency, which is a word we get from energy. In fact, even the paper money is starting to disappear. It's all electronic. It's all virtual. So, they're all concepts that we just decide signify value. But we want our lives to have value. And so therefore we gravitate towards these things. This is why it becomes very easy to see the movie that everyone else is seeing. It has value. It's very difficult to reach out and gravitate towards the things that no one is seeing, because you're having an experience that you might not be able to share with anyone else. I used to work with actors, in theater shows, where I would see them deflate a little bit when they realized there wasn't a big audience in the house. And I would say, what are you doing? You're taking this out on the people who are here. These are the people that deserve to be rewarded with your best performance, because these are the bravest audience members you'll ever know. They're coming to the show that's not successful. God bless them. But so what meaning do we take from the experiences that can't possibly be shared? This is the thorny question of consciousness, right? And I had wanted to share with you, following our exchange on Alex Lefchuk's Midweek Drive, that when I was making my first film, directing my first movie, back in, I think it was summer of '94, in the San Francisco Bay Area. And towards the end of the shoot, we had a night shoot in the hills, I think outside Atherton, California. It's a very affluent neighborhood near like Palo Alto, where Stanford University is. And I was up in the hills. We had a break while we were lighting up this big exterior scene at a big mansion. And I just wandered off. And I don't even remember now why, but sometimes as a director, it's really important to go and clear your head, to meditate on what is to come, so that you're open to the answers that want to come forward, rather than the answers you want to impose upon material yourself. And it's important to do this, except in Alabama, where they don't want you to meditate, of course. So I wandered away, but knew that I couldn't get lost in these woods, because we were lighting up the countryside with our movie lights. And I went off into the hills and into the woods. And at a certain point, I realized I no longer could see the lights. And a little panic came over me. I was lost. And oh my goodness, how do you live this down? Assuming you get found and you do live, how do you live it down? He wandered away from his own movie. And I, as
where were you again when you wandered? So tell me again.
So I'm up in the
you...
woods, in the hills. I think it was above Atherton, California, but it was a very affluent neighborhood near Palo Alto, near like Sanford.
So when you're there and you're in the woods, like there's wildlife out there that you can't really mess with. You know?
I start to hear. These are. I think it's along like the Santa Cruz Mountains. So this is to this day area that's not been developed. I mean, it is wild, and I start to hear noises. I start to hear a very loud noise, and I get very concerned, and as I get closer to its source, I realize, well, that's a heartbeat. I'm hearing a heartbeat. Is it mine? No, I am one of these people that in stress, my heart, I don't get a quickened pulse. My pulse slows down a great deal. And I have high blood pressure sometimes, but a low pulse. And so this heartbeat is coming from outside me. And as I proceeded with tender caution, it gets louder and louder and louder. And finally, I stop to try to triangulate the sound. And I realize it's emanating from the trees all around me. The sound is coming from the trees. And something inspired me to look up at that moment. This panoply of stars. I had already lived in Los Angeles so long, probably almost 10 years at that point, 8 years, that I had forgotten about the concept of looking at the night sky, because we don't really get, for a long time because of pollution, but also just because of light pollution, we don't see stars here. So then when you're someplace where there is a night sky, you almost have to remind yourself, look up, and thousands of stars. And no sooner did I see them than they all started to explode and started raining down onto me. And I become, I think, aware that this is an unusual experience that I'm having. Maybe I ought to try to get back, but where do I go? I look in front of me and I notice a footprint in the earth. And I lift up and I put my foot down into that footprint. It fits perfectly. That footprint was made by me. I look behind me and I see my tracks from where I've walked in. This is in a direction that I have yet to head, and it has footprints that were made by me. And at that moment, I realized that this was telling me that I had found and was walking the path in my life that was meant for me. I wrote this down as soon as I got back to base camp, as we call it. And if I had not written it down, I would never believe that this had happened. I mean, and never would have believed it. My conscious mind can't take control of this. But I didn't lose consciousness. I didn't lose time. I wasn't abducted by aliens, as far as we know. But our conscious mind, this is like awakening from a dream, right? If you don't write down your dream as soon as you wake up, you may think you know what that dream was, but you don't, because your conscious mind has tried to take control of that which it does not control, i.e. your unconscious and the voice that is speaking to you through it. So what to make of this experience? Just that, hewing back to our conversation on Alex's show and how this came up, there are ways to access our different components of consciousness that don't require dreaming, that don't require meditation, that don't require DMT and the activation of the pineal gland through those kind of assisted means. We can access different components of our consciousness. For many people, falling in love is this, right? The way that time slows down. There's so many topics you had suggested we would speak about that we won't on this, but time is foremost among them, right? The idea that there are position papers that have been written by Nobel Prize winning scientists far brighter than me that theorize that the concept of time is of linear time is utterly a construct of the left side of our brain. So anyway, these experiences that open us to other aspects of our consciousness, to other avenues of perception, can be incredibly valuable, but the value can only be measured in personal terms. And truthfully, cinema ought to be one of those. We are collectively, now we're individually on our computer screens or on our television screens, but collectively, historically, we would go in to these sacred spaces called cinemas, and we would share in a collective dream. But the value of that dream was utterly through our personal experience, and that's how it should be. It can't be measured in box office. It can't be measured in toy sales. The real value is what it does for the individual, and that's why I never want to take the smile off anyone's face. And if I did that with my comments about Star Wars, oh well, get over it, grow up.
Yeah, and don't be cautious when you go outside, because you may melt under the sun, under the heat of the sun. Wow, Phil, that story was amazing. And so how long ago was that?
That was 20 almost, we're going on 30 years, so 27 years ago this summer, I think. Was maybe it was even longer. It might have been 93. Look, I became a filmmaker because I was told it was one job that required no math, so I can't be expected to count that high, but it was a long time ago. Yeah,
it left an impression on you, and with that with the passage of time, do you think it's changed your ability to remember that experience, or do you think it's when you recall that experience, what do you think happened at that point? I mean, you had this, you had some sort of communion with nature in a way, and so what? Maybe it's even the wrong question to ask. Like, what do you think it was that occurred?
Yeah, I mean, we align ourselves so rigorously with what we see, right? We only believe what we see, and we only see what we believe, right? The examples of how the early Native Americans, when those first ships came, they literally did not see them because there was nothing in their imagination that could allow for this possibility. And it wasn't until they were brought out and touched them that they became visible. This is a fascinating concept about perception and belief. Our vision and our beliefs are so intertwined. Is seeing believing, or is believing seeing? But we also are so rigorously attached to vision as a concept that we often forget our other senses. We've built entire worlds now almost exclusively around vision, right? That is what our virtual landscape tends to be. That we eschew listening, right? As well as other senses. um, which separates us further from what we were talking about at the beginning, which is our own unique way of knowing something. What is truth? Well, as far as I understand what truth is something you can embody. You can't embody facts. You can embody truth. I know I love my wife. I know I love my friends. I know I love my neighbor. I can embody this truth. They aren't facts that can be proven. It's truth that can be embodied. And we separate ourselves from that by again gravitating so much towards this relationship between believing and seeing. So what happened was clearly my awareness of, my opening to, my adoption of a different way of seeing. And look, we all just decide that how we see things is how things are, but let's face it, most of it's illusory. We see a very limited range in the light spectrum. We look at the table that our laptops are sitting on, and we decide that that is solid, even though we know that it's not, right? It's the illusion of solid by these microscopic particles, these subatomic particles that are spinning around so quickly. But most of this solid object is empty space. So we've accepted an illusion of it as fact. So again, I don't have an answer for you about what happened, other than I entered into another way of perceiving things, and that way of perceiving things showed me who I am.
I think other people, some people might call that God or angels, because you were in a situation where potentially you could have fallen foul of, like, you could have slipped, tripped, you could have hurt yourself in the dark, you could have potentially even died, and you had a need to get back to base camp. And at that point, when your survival instincts kicked in, and you felt a solitude and a in nature, and you needed to you had a strong wish to get back to safety. That's the point when that happened for you, that spark happened. And
the only correction I would say is I had a perceived need to get back to base camp. But what also happened was fear was taken away. I released all fear. And so, yes, I saw my footprint on the ground and I followed it. But that might not have led me to base camp. That might have led me to death. But whatever it was, I absolutely could not deny that I was on the path I had laid out for myself. So it brought me in touch with a certain knowing that we'll describe as faith. And to me, in part at least, faith is knowing that your soul's journey can never be compromised. We may not get what we want. We may not get what we perceive we want, according to our ambitions, our aims, our heart's desires. But our soul's journey will never be compromised. We can only walk the path that we laid out for ourselves. And so the challenge becomes, if I listen to what the heartbeat of those trees are telling me, is how deeply can we connect with our root system? How deep can we lay our roots? How deep can we connect with what is around us and in front of us? And how can we seek out that which we can most deeply connect with? So those are the things that happened to me in retrospect. Again, this is probably the beginning of or an early step, literally, on a philosophical journey that I have continued to take since then in numerous ways. But increasingly, right, I perceive the tasks that I take on, the films that I make, the stories that I tell, that their value for me lies in how much they reveal myself to me and show me what I'm made of.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I feel like over the past 2 years, I've been on a bit of a journey myself, and a lot of that is getting to know me, and also realizing that all of the energy that I've been putting into certain things, like studying for different degrees or trying to reach a certain academic level, all of the energy and focus that I've been putting into that, my motivation for doing that is no longer there, or like or the motivation for achieving those things was out of a negative place, out of spite, out of wanting to be better than people who came before me, or people who should have cared for me as a younger person, and I wanted to be better than them. And it wasn't really until I became a parent myself that I started to feel more connected to other people in a way, whereas previously I would see other people as either very plainly, very black and white, friend or enemy. And and kind of like, how can this person benefit me, or how, I need to avoid that person, and just be very very black and white about who I would interact with. And it's kind of, being a parent and having a child is like opened up a level of empathy that I didn't realize that I had before.
Well, like with children, right? You look at kids and you see these literal 360-degree balls of energy, these that could go in any direction, the total potentiality of it. And it is a mirror for us as adults of how we are not that. At the same time, the good news about having perceived enemies or perceived slights is that it does, for a long time, get us moving. It does become the fuel that propels us forward, if not upwards, right? Sometimes we do become aware that that need to propel forward isn't elevating us in any way. But that means that we've achieved a new level of consciousness, and we wouldn't have gotten there were it not for these, let's call them betrayals in our lives. And again, this is why mythology, this is why religion, I think one reason it matters. It might bring so much to so many people, but think of the story of Judas. This always, as a child, just messed with me so much. Like, I don't understand. His best friend sold him for a bag of coins that he threw away. What is this? And it's taken me a full lifetime almost to really fully understand, wow, the story of Judas is the story of love. It's the story of sacrifice, the sacrifice that Judas is willing to make on behalf of his best friend. Jesus goes to him and says, "You'll betray me." "No, I won't." The denial, "No, I won't," was "No, I can't. I love you too much." "Listen, Judas, you're the only one I trust enough to betray me, because if someone doesn't betray me, I don't become the Christ. My heroic journey cannot take place without a betrayal." Interesting, right? The root origin of the word betrayal means to serve. So betrayal